guys get bonus minutes because you're all so punctual and I love it. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
How's it going?
Bueno.
Welcome to the Science and Food panel. I am your moderator, Rachel, or at Sharksberian on Twitter. Follow me. I want to take a moment to introduce our panelists. Panelists, if you can say your name and what particular food soapbox you are most nerdy about.
So I'm Tina Hessman-Say. I'm the senior writer at Science News magazine. And my particular food geekery is the microbes that help us make everything from bread to cheese to beer to wine to, well, you know, all of the good things in life.
Boys.
Hi. Do this the rock and roll way. Sorry. I'm going to talk about eating microphones. No. I'm Trevor Valley. I'm a paleontologist. I'm also a certified advanced cicerone. That's the beer version of a wine somm. So I know more about beer than I probably should, and I get paid to drink it, which is rad. I'm going to be talking about the fun stuff like beer and all that, and also what happens to flesh when it's cooked, specifically grilling.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
I'm Liz DeColvenaire. I am a computational chemist, quantum chemist. I work at a drug discovery company. I'm a postdoc there. My food geek out things are artificial sweeteners and ice cream.
Cheers to ice cream. I'm here for that. And for the record, I am a writer, science writer, other writer. I also am a certified wine nerd, which is why Trevor and I, when we drink, it gets real nerdy. So awesome. It sounds like we've got kind of a shared interest in what happens when yeast vomits beautiful things up.
Well, I mean, it is Dragoncon.
No, really? Everyone's interested in booze? I'm shocked. Do you have a particular favorite yeast? Or microbe in general? We'll just broaden it out.
Well, I am not personally acquainted with this yeast, but I've heard from its friends. So there's a particular wild yeast that the scientists at the University of Indiana isolated from a batch of wild brew beer that was brewed in a vacant lot in Indianapolis. And this particular yeast, its designation is YH166, apparently makes the beer smell like an umbrella drink. It has sort of a pineapple-y, guava-y, tropical something. So that sounds very appealing. So
where can one become acquainted with this yeast?
Well, the guy has he supposedly is going to be selling it on the internet. Wild Pitch Yeast. I just visited the site and it's not available yet. So
rats. Trevor, have you tried it? I feel like you've tried it.
No, I know of it. I haven't tried it, but that's actually a new thing in beer. Lot of weird stuff is being cultivated by a lot of weird stuff. I'm trying to remember the brewery, but one guy used wild bees collected from his beard. Yeah, did you have it? Okay, I was not willing to try.
For those of you who aren't acquainted, it was awful, apparently.
Yeah.
That is the review we're getting from the front row.
There is one that I did try.
Shocker.
It was from this nano brewery up in Oregon, appropriately called Fossil. They took wild geese from an Albertosaurus skeleton and brewed a beer with it, and it was this weird kind of like caramelly salty thing going on. They were going for a goza, but they missed. But it was still really good. But yeah, yeast does really cool things. They've even sent yeast to space, cultivated in space, and brought it back down. And I think it was Victory Brewing that did. No, it was Ninkasi. They made a beer from space yeast.
This is the Space Force I can get behind.
Yeah, right?
I'm here to invest. That's incredible.
But I actually had a question for you.
Yes.
Okay.
Does, yeast versus artificial sweeteners,
Yeah.
is this a good thing, a bad thing? Can they throw up, ethanol from that? What can they do with it?
It depends on what your artificial sweetener is, because there's a couple of different sort of broad categories. You have your very intense sweeteners, like sucralose and like aspartame, which function by being ridiculously sweet, hundreds of times sweeter than sugar. Some of those yeast can digest, some of them they can't. You have your sugar alcohols, which instead of having these nice cyclic compounds that we tend to have in our normal sugars, we've broken them open, we've added on OH groups to the ends. That's also a bit of a mixed bag. It tends to not be easily digested by yeast, by bacteria, by us, which is why they're useful. And then you
What are some examples of that one?
Sugar alcohols. A lot of you have probably encountered maltitol, which you'll see in artificially sweetened chocolates and protein bars and gummies. Don't eat that one. It causes a lot of digestive upset because it passes through to your small and large intestine where it pulls water out of your digestive system and causes some problems. Erythritol, which is the smallest non-digestible sugar alcohol, that one goes into your bloodstream, goes out through your kidneys, has pretty much no side effects, but has some chemistry that makes it hard to cook with. And then technically, antifreeze. I'm totally spacing on the name. The sweet one.
Glycerol.
Yeah, ethylene glycol.
Thank you.
Is technically a sugar alcohol and will also kill you. Don't eat that one.
To be fair, if you're dead, the calories don't count.
To be fair.
And the last group is because I hinted at it. You can take things like glucose and make the opposite-handed version. It'll still work on your tongue and taste as sweet. You can't digest it. They can't digest it. The problem is nothing can make it either because most life on this planet is set up to make one-handedness of molecules, and making the other-handedness is really, really hard because we don't have great industrial processes for making
So for
super
the
pure mixtures.
dumb people on the panel, me, molecules have hands?
So
That's how they high-five each other.
Oh, okay.
take your two hands. They look sort of the same, but there's no way to overlay them to put the thumbs exactly on top of each other the same way. Instead, you end up with a mirror plane.
Unless somehow you're Hunter Thompson and then you do that.
Yeah, let's not think about that. Molecules have the same, if you have enough groups stuck on it, have the same property. If you have a ball and you have 4 different things sticking out of that ball, there are 2 different ways to order those 4 things that are separated by a mirror. They're not the same, so that if some enzyme or something is interacting with it, it can't, if you have 2 of those groups, it can't latch on the same way to both because things aren't in the right order. So life works on one set of handedness depending on the molecule, not on the other, at least on our planet.
That's why thalidomide is harmful in some cases, but not in the others, right?
And there's a couple other drug-related studies where they accidentally made the wrong handedness and there was problems.
Good to know. Good to know. So I'm curious more about, it seems like every month there's a different study that comes out that says, oh, artificial sugar is horrible for you. It's great for you. It will kill you. It's totally fine. It's going to make you really depressed. What are actual truths here?
The actual truth is that nutritional science is really, really hard, and we don't have great studies. One of the panels in here earlier, I think it was That's Not How Science Works, was discussing that in an ideal world, we have an experiment, we change exactly one thing, that's the variable, and we can interpret the results easily. Humans are really complicated. You can feed the same thing to 2 different people. I think this was a study done with almonds. And the amount of calories you get out of that almond is slightly different depending on your genetics, your gut biome, other random stuff, possibly time of the month if you have some sort of hormonal cycle. So the problem with a lot of nutritional studies is there's a huge amount of other things going on that make it really hard to tease apart the results. The general idea, at least the current idea, seems to be that some artificial sweeteners, while they're not caloric, still trigger the same sort of insulin responses in your body and a lot of other biochemical processes that might make your body try to turn more of the sugars in your bloodstream into fats rather than utilizing them. So that's maybe where it's at. It's really hard to tell, and it also depends on what type of artificial sweetener you're looking at, because your sort of hyper sweet ones, there's definitely no calories you're getting, but it might have the insulin response. Some like maltitol, you can still get about 2 calories, big C calories, so kilocalories per gram, so it's about half as caloric as sugar. You can still get out of it. So if you're eating a bunch of maltitol, you're not actually getting 0 calories, you're getting half the normal amount, which is still something.
I can brew with maltitol. Does that be
We're gonna have some hotel room experiments with.
I will not confirm nor deny I brought a 5-gallon beer It's just shutting.
I don't know that I would drink any beer brewed at Dragoncon. That's getting into the
It's not
beer
wild yeast. I'm not
microbes.
collecting wild yeast. Hell no.
Okay.
If I did, I'd name the beer Concrud, and it would never sell, and it would task like Monday.
And yet somehow everyone would get it.
Everyone.
Yeah, it'll be free.
It'd be the new pie. It's gonna happen.
Is that when the hot tub was closed yesterday?
All to full.
All right. So, in our audience, we obviously have a bunch of food nerds. I want to just go ahead and start opening it up for questions because I'm sure you all are super curious, and we can talk about literally anything up here. Panelists, I will ask you if a question's directed directly at you. Just repeat it so that everyone can hear. I'm seeing a hand here already.
So I've been harvesting my own yeast for kombucha, yeast and bacteria. Any
Cool.
concerns with doing that, or like I'm just talking about open air, kind of letting shit form?
Concerns with harvesting your own yeast?
There are some yeasts that will happily grow in the conditions where there is sugar and warmth and lots of nice other things to eat that are not necessarily so good for you. You can buy purified strains of yeast that you could mix your own kombucha with. So yeah, there are lots of yeasts that under certain circumstances could cause some definite problems.
What makes a yeast good or bad for you? Like, what does a bad for you yeast do in worst case scenario?
A bad for you yeast either does horrible things to your intestines or invades your tissues and causes an infection. And antifungals are somewhat difficult. They can be pretty nasty, and it can take a long time to clear an infection.
Yikes, not what you want from your kombucha.
Not at all.
No, not healthy.
That actually happened during the creation of a specific beer style called a saison, or a farmhouse ale.
Really?
Original fermentation styles for saisons were in very large open vats, usually in barns. That's why they're called farmhouse ales. And they're traditionally kind of like floral, a little bit tart, a little bit kind of like off flavor. But so the rumor is, anecdotally, the first batch that was just left out open, I don't remember what yeast it was that got in there, but it came in possibly off of a field mouse or something that had gotten in and then got back out. And the family that made the first saison, they died after drinking the beer because they didn't have any pasteurization.
And then we kept
And
making
somebody
it.
else said, let's try that again.
Yeah. I mean,
That's a really popular beer style. Why are we like, oh yes, the mouse beer killed people. Let's make more.
I don't know why they kept trying to do saisons, but they did, and now it is an incredibly popular style.
I mean, it's delicious. How did they figure out how to make it safe?
Same question with mushrooms.
Yeah, trial and error.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's totally fair.
Hey, Jimmy ate that one and he died. Don't eat that one again. Try that one. Oh, there goes Kevin.
Or things like the morel, where if you don't prep and cook them properly, are very, very bad for you.
Or apricot pits.
Or any of the very,
What
any
about
of the various
apricot
fruits
pits?
with
No, I
alkaloids.
don't know about this. Tell me.
Oh, apricot pits. Is it cyanide?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, apple seeds have cyanide in them. You just have to eat a lot. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's also a legume called a lupini bean, which has these bitter alkaloids in it, which will also kill you. They taste bad enough that it's hard to eat enough to screw yourself up, but you need to rinse and soak them 10 times. And this was apparently a common bean to eat in Rome. In ancient Rome, it's a very high protein bean, but who figured out, okay, I washed it the first time, can't eat it. I'll wash it again, can't eat it. 8 more times. Oh, now this is edible.
Is that not the definition of insanity? Like,
Once again.
just keep going. Just keep going. Yes.
First of all, I always wonder that about cashews because, you know, there's this big poisonous sac and then someone just thought to break off the butthole. I don't know. But,
So to repeat it for people who couldn't hear, cashews are a big fruit, and then you break off the phrase was the little butthole. Cashews are a big fruit, fruit that's poisonous, and then the little actual cashew seed.
But I had a question for Trevor.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the cashew, is the butthole.
I love things that I learned.
I'm looking at the bag that's in my hotel room in a totally different way now.
Bag of buttholes. All
Bag
right.
of buttholes.
So my question was for Trevor.
But hey, it's Dragoncon. I
If
mean,
this were an after 10 p.m. panel, I'd have a lot more comments. What was your question?
So my question's for Trevor on a totally different note. So you said you talk on how proteins and meat toughens up when it's cooked. So I know about things like protease and some of the enzymes that you can use to tenderize meat and things like pineapple, honey. What, if any, are some of the ones that a regular cook wouldn't know about that you know about? What do you use for meat tenderizer?
Uncommon enzymes and meat tenderizers.
so my dad's family is Basque, and we use a lot of vinegars. Red wine vinegar is amazing as a meat tenderizer with a little bit of black pepper and even like a little dash of citrus juice. You have this really cool Basque marinade to the point where if you leave it in there for too long, it begins not just marinating, but begins denaturing and cooking it. It's it's
Like a meaty ceviche.
yeah, exactly. But you don't want it at that point. It's literally 15 minutes. As soon as the outer layer of the musculature begins to turn color, that's when you take it out and immediately throw it on the grill.
Not just beef for that.
I've done everything in it.
Okay.
I've even brushed on salmon that's been cedar plank grilling. Yeah, the one thing that's weird that you wouldn't really think of though, and this works really well with chicken, is water. Literally just soaking it in a bag of water for half hour to an hour. It loosens up, it soaks it all, loosens all the fibers, and then you can, grill a piece of chicken for about, 4.5, 5 minutes per side, get them, grill marks, but all the time. Sorry, Canadian. And then, water works incredibly well. I wouldn't use it for red meat, however, because, that just, it turns into this really weird kind of,
All right.
basically like a hemoglobin sludge. Yeah, it's not cool.
Not a menu item I would buy.
No.
So I have a question because of your career and the fact that you want to talk about cooking flesh. Have you had mammoth steak?
Right. Again, also paleontologist. I was part of a 7-week expedition to Siberia, digging up woolly mammoth carcasses, and ate a whole bunch of really cool stuff in Siberia. We found a carcass, and I immediately went, "Hey, look, the meat is actually still pink." After it defrosted from the permafrost, it was beginning to denature because, unfortunately, mammals can't freeze well. All of the nucleotides freeze and create crystals in the cells and cell membrane ruptures, and on a long enough timeline, if it's not kept at freezing temperatures, it will basically melt into mammoth goo. But the meat was still pink. It was rad, and we were taking skin samples on it so I can look it under a biological microscope. And I looked at my director and went, "Can I just start a fire and make mammoth jerky?" Unfortunately, National Geographic had already thought about that and went, "No, we were not cleared insurance-wise." But that doesn't mean I don't...
Does that mean that somewhere there's an insurance policy that allows for mammoth jerky?
I want to know what it is.
You just need the proper rider.
Oh, next time it's on. But I will or will not admit to possibly having mammoth tissue in my freezer at home. That at some point in time may become a something.
Cool. So I'll be visiting you shortly. Yes, I'll grab you and then you.
So I am a vegetarian who loves meat. I really miss the taste of meat. So when I saw Impossible Burger on the description for this panel, I'm vaguely familiar with that process, but I guess I'm just more interested in kind of if you could give more details about how the Impossible Burger tastes so much like beef, and kind of compare that to how other meat substitutes work, and also maybe where you see the future of those kinds of meat substitutes going.
So meat substitutes and Impossible Burgers.
I've only had it once. I think it's made from beets. I'm not entirely sure what it's
No,
made
that's
from.
the Beyond Burger.
Oh,
Yeah,
wait,
so-
what?
For those of us who just eat burgers because that's all that we know about, can you describe the Impossible and the Beyond Burger and the Utopia Burger, and I'm sure there are other fun, I don't think there's
So I haven't heard of the
Dystopia burger.
Utopia burger, but there's been like this renaissance in meat substitute products that can sort of get divided into two broad categories. One's for meat eaters like me who maybe don't want to eat as much meat but still love the taste, and some for lifetime vegetarians who don't like the taste of meat, vegetarians who've never liked meat, who want something that fills the same niche. I want something that goes in my burger patty that I can cook up real quick and is tasty. So the Beyond Burger is for the lifelong vegetarians. It's a really high-end, basically veggie burger. It has the appearance in raw form of beef. It kind of has some of the texture features, but it doesn't really taste like beef. The Impossible Burger is specifically aimed at us meat-eating folk. It has a mixture of, I believe, vegetable proteins and a genetically modified yeast, if I remember correctly, that makes, heme?
It makes a leg hemoglobin.
Yeah.
So from
So it bleeds, it tastes correct, mostly. Make sure that your restaurant doesn't overcook it. If it's well done, it's horrible.
I mean, that's true for all burgers.
Yeah.
It's worse. It's worse.
It's a mortal sin.
It's worse than the range of worseness is worse.
Wait, but so can we go back to it bleeds?
Yes, it bleeds. It has approximately the right mouthfeel. It's a little bit weedy in a strange way, but I like it.
I despised it.
But in general, you're seeing a lot of things like mushrooms getting used a lot more because they provide an umami type of flavor, and they provide that nice savoriness and a certain meatiness if you cook them right. You're seeing wheat derivatives, so a lot of gluten-based products, you see it in mock Asian vegetarian food, like mock duck. You have these sort of globs of processed gluten that have a nice sort of meaty mouthfeel, and they fry up nicely.
Globs of processed gluten is not the best way to describe it on a menu, though. I think that's
No,
not as
it would
appetizing.
be nice if they mentioned it, because then you know at least what you're eating.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you're seeing a lot of much more seasoned tofu, because if you take your normal brick of tofu off the shelf and you try to season it, you'll notice that nothing will happen, because the tofu is this sort of slightly porous structure filled with water, because what you start with soy milk and you basically curdle it and it globs up and you make this brick, but it has a lot of liquid already in it. You can't put liquid into it if there's already liquid in it. But if you press it and get the liquid out and then you marinate it, you can get all these wonderful flavors in it, and then you bake it and you can get some of these nice savory flavors. And with firm tofu, you can get a decently meaty texture, and restaurants are finally picking up on this and making not just brick of tofu on salad, but something that even as a meat eater, I will preferentially sometimes order. Because it's that tasty. And just to make sure I have my meat eater credentials, in my undergrad institution, I ran the largest non-religious organization on campus, which was Meat Club.
Yeah.
I love that, and I hope that's on your resume.
Well,
I'm in love with that.
The other thing is that a lot of people are trying to eat less meat to be environmentally friendly, but people like meat. They don't want to give it up. And so there has been this idea of growing meat in the lab, and there have been a couple of attempts to do so.
I'm so down for that.
The problem is
GMO
that
meat.
when you grow cells in a dish in a lab, you can only make it very thin, because then the cells in the middle will run out of oxygen. So that's the problem. You want to grow muscle tissue, but if you're growing it in the lab, you need to exercise it, so it'll have a bit of chew when you cook it.
I can just
Glob on a treadmill, and I'm really
I can
here
just
for that.
see dishes with these little actuators going.
I'm just thinking lab-grade veal, and then you're done.
And apparently there's a guy who grew frog legs, the meat from frog legs.
Oh, cool.
And he has like little things that exercise the muscles.
It needs to have a sound. Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey.
But so is the exercising mechanism, is it like the things that people put on their abs to like work out your abs? Is that the
No,
10 unit or
Like
whatever?
electrostim?
I think it actually, you have to like contract it and release it.
I'm fascinated by that. Okay, but before we move on, Trevor, you said you hated the...
I despise the Impossible Burger.
Explain why.
It did not taste very meaty to me for some reason. It may have been overcooked. I asked for it rare because I wanted to have the bleeding thing, and it was on the medium side of medium rare.
The problem is a lot of cooks don't yet know, like, oh, even though it's a plant burger, you still have to cook it rare.
Yeah.
You just throw out the instruction.
Yeah, that's why I attempted. But to me, it kind of tasted like it was trying to be meat mixed with mushrooms, cardboard, and sadness. And I'm just like, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna try this. This will be interesting. I wonder. No, that's a hard no. I mean,
Interesting.
No.
So, are there any veggie type burgers that don't include mushrooms? Because I personally am allergic to mushrooms, and to all fungi, which is horrible. And so I would like to try one of these, but I don't want to die.
I don't know any because I can't digest soy proteins, so which sucks. I'm right. So lactose intolerant, and I can't do soy. So I'm just looking at ice creams going, I miss you.
Wait, ice cream.
Life
Do you
is
have
rice.
any ice cream solutions over there?
You can make ice cream out of coconut milk. This is both available commercially
I'm allergic
and
to
something you
coconuts,
can
too.
make at home. Okay, cashews.
I can do buttholes. I
That
can't.
whole juice.
Yeah, we can't call it milk because they do not lactate.
Also, I really don't want to call it milk now. Like,
No.
not after that discussion.
No.
Yes, because butthole juice is so much better.
Right. What? Hashtag
they have-
butthole juice.
They have.
This actually gets back to the alcoholic ice cream. That it's somewhat hard to make alcoholic ice cream with enough alcohol worth writing home about because it will change the freezing temperature so low that the ice cream would burn your mouth with how cold it is. So you use stablers and thickeners, gums, thickeners. So you could do that with cashew milk. You could do that with something else, and get back to the mouthfeel you want. You can have eggs.
No, yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, so then you thicken it with egg yolks and some of these stabilizers and thickeners, and you'll get a nice creamy thing, and you fill it with vanilla beans, and you fill it with, bourbon and vanilla beans, and you have something delicious.
I'm coming over to your house.
I think I'm gonna buy one of those ice cream makers that all the Star Wars guys run around with.
No, just get yourself some liquid nitrogen and either an immersion blender or get a normal power drill, and then you just sort of get a really cheap whisk and shove it in the chuck and tighten it down real fast. You pour over the liquid nitrogen slowly as you're whisking, you'll get a beautiful ice cream. You put it in the freezer, let it set up for an hour or so. Smoothest ice cream you've ever had.
I have access to liquid nitrogen.
Great. Do you have a power drill?
Don't ask.
Where does the average home cook find their liquid nitrogen?
Internet.
Use dry ice and you'll get a fizzy ice cream.
Yeah, you'll get a
Yeah,
but
it gets fizzy.
yeah, and it acidifies it, which can sometimes curdle the milk or milk
What is
substitute.
this? Dry ice?
Dry ice.
Yeah.
The nice thing about the liquid nitrogen is it mixes and then sublimates.
All right, we had a question over here in the shirt.
In the shirt.
No one else is
Are
wearing
those
shirts.
motorcycles?
We're not wearing shirts today, guys.
Oh, bicycles? Cool.
To comment on tenderizing, we do a controlled freezer burn method at work.
Cool.
It's very contained, and it sits for like 6 months minimum, and if you open it, you get yelled at.
It's like a developer studio.
Yeah, it's really crazy. It's an entire walk-in. It has a lock and another lock on that lock.
Where do you work?
I work at several places.
Okay. That's advanced.
That was a CIA level
Do you have
confidential
access to
answer.
liquid nitrogen?
Yes.
Rad.
But we do that, and it's been a great method. We can introduce a lot of dry herbs, and it's basically like walking into some weird surreal thing because it's very herby. And we have, like, right now there is a whole side of beef and 72 chickens sitting in there.
Really?
Yes.
Can everyone hear back there? Did you guys hear that? So they do a controlled freezer burn method
To tenderize.
to tenderize. How does that tenderize? That's
Because
You
the
got a
water
side of
crystals.
beef and 72 chickens.
72 chickens.
Because they're in there, so you have water crystals that activate, and they basically just imagine being stabbed with thousands. Oh, okay.
Yeah. No. Yeah. Everybody needs to hear
Oh wait,
this.
is a mic right? Isn't that a mic right there?
Is it? Oh.
All right, so, ooh, man, oh yeah. Oh, how we doing here? This might be the gin talking, I'm sorry. So we do a controlled freezer burn method. It's you cannot let outside air in, because if anyone's had freezer burnt food, it tastes like your freezer. And it's awful. And it tastes nasty. So by counteracting that, you put lots of dry herbs. We have garlic in there. We have just other things.
Flavoring the air?
We are flavoring the air. It's very weird. I live in Birmingham, Alabama, so I have some friends, and I work at a hospital, but I have several restaurants. They come over and we all do
Wait, this is happening in a hospital?
What are you
Yes.
doing?
We have about 1,000. It's not human.
Beef.
Long pig.
The other white meat.
So, but we do have several freezers. So we had one we weren't using. It was just our. So we locked it off. I get several restaurants in the area. We started participating in this, and we're just been messing with it. We did Asian about a year ago.
Asian humans?
No! Oh God, no! I'm sorry! No! No, we did a lot of. We did 3 pork, like 3 full pigs, and we did lots of chilies. We rubbed them down. That is one of it. But
They enjoy it.
It's really great after that, because then you get something that's so tender. And it also it's penetrated so deep. Like even the marrow on some of the bones was just great. Those of you who eat marrow, and no, it's not long pig. But it does kind of change how you look at tenderizing.
That's really
That's
cool.
rad.
That really is.
That's even cooler that it happens at a hospital.
Medical professionals.
I did have a question though.
Oh, yes, what is your question?
We've tried to sous vide like a lot of weight before,
Yes,
and
you
it
do.
becomes very difficult. I'm wondering if anyone knows of any reason why it can be more difficult at higher weight.
If no one on the panel does, I know somebody in the audience who does.
No, I
All right, Chad, come up
Okay.
here.
What about it? Higher weights and sous vide, how
Microphone.
hard it can be.
Wait,
When you
So
have
Chad is
a-
one of our
have your
science
types.
track former panelists and built his own sous vide. He also tried to science the perfect donut at one point in our friendship.
So I wanted to ask you, have you tried that in vacuum bags that have been popularized by sous vide to sort of counteract the air interaction?
No, we have an industrial vacuum packer.
Is everyone
Okay,
familiar with sous vide? Does anyone want to quick explain it?
Yeah, and Mike.
Okay, so sous vide is this process that, as a French word, translates to without air. So basically, you take advantage of the fact that most meats are comprised of a lot of proteins, that you know what temperature the proteins denature at or what they unravel and tenderize at. So you can select a meat like beef that has proteins like myosin and kinesin that denature around like 125 or 127 degrees Fahrenheit, which is like typically the temperature of medium rare meat. And instead of grilling it where you have no idea what temperature your steak is going to be at because the grill is just really freaking hot, you can actually put it in a water bath with a heater that stays at that set temperature for however long you want. So you can have a water bath that's at perfect medium rare temperature. You can leave your steak in there for up to a day. It's going to come out as just a mush of hemoglobin grossness, but at like 4 hours you get a steak that's perfectly tenderized without having to do any additives. Additives sometimes really help the flavor, and then you just sear it as hot as you can. You get a really nice crust on the outside, and you never have to worry about overcooking your steak if you do it right. Doing it with large volumes of meat is hard because normalizing the temperature is really difficult. The best way that I've found to do that is I've bought some really large igloo coolers, and then off of Amazon you can buy 1 kilowatt immersion heaters that are kind of sketchy, but as long as they're fully immersed, because they just get really, really hot, you don't want them exposed to air. They start like oxidizing and stuff because it's cheap metal. But you can stick them in a big igloo cooler with holes drilled through the top, and then put in a cheap pump to circulate the water. And as long as you have like the water circulating, it helps a lot. But having huge body of water that's all at the same temperature is kind of the challenge with, as volume gets larger, making sure your temperature is also equalized throughout.
That is ghetto.
Yes, so
Okay,
as the cooler gets larger, you add more.
Yeah, because I mean we have
so.
tilt skillets and all that, so we can hold like 50 gallons, so we can just dump things in there. Like Sands, which if nobody knows, it's large plastic containers that you can just put things in.
That's what we do.
Yeah,
We used to make like
and
Sands.
but I guess that's the problem is maybe we just need more heaters. I might need to just buy more.
Yeah,
but we
you
have
can find
regulations
super
on it. Like I'm certified to use it in my particular county because our health department makes you do that. Same with vacuum packing. They don't let you vacuum pack in a commercial setting without a
I
certification.
don't want to kill the sous vide discourse, but I just got an eye on the time, and I want to kind of move to more rapid fire questions.
Yes.
Yes.
This is a yes, no. Is all of this happening at the hospital? Don't go to the hospital. What is it?
I don't know. If I'm going to have a last meal somewhere, it's going to be that hot.
It's not UAB. And just to be clear, this part of it is a part of the old hospital. So it was where we had coolers set up and they were out of
Just
commission.
using an abandoned hospital.
So he's doing it in the haunted part of the
Sous vide
hospital.
and freeze meat.
Yeah, so we
I would watch this
basically,
HBO series.
me and a group of friends rented out
Okay.
and got them reworking. We used some of our people and like,
Excellent.
so they come by with food
Nice.
trucks and we go back to restaurants and
That's
use
beautiful.
it. So
I'm
it's
here for that.
It's just kind of a community effort, and we don't
I
serve
wanna-
it to people. We eat it ourselves. So if we get sick and I'm dead, like
Oh yeah.
who
The
drank
liability's
Saison
gone.
for the first
okay,
time.
I do.
you know.
Well, I want. We're gonna find you at the bar later, but I want to move
Yeah.
on to the other
Yeah.
question.
So going back to talking about like the fake meats and stuff like that, are there case studies that like prove that this is fine to eat? Because my only, as a meat eater moving into trying to be vegetarian and doing the fake meat, I constantly question like, have we studied this for years to know what this is going to actually?
Yeah. What are the long-term effects of eating fake meat? Anyone know anything about that?
I mean, tofu and soy products have a really long history of human use. There's been some somewhat questionable studies on whether or not the plant-based estrogen-like compounds have any effect. The answer mostly seems to be no. For some of the other ones, the gluten-based ones, gluten is a big minefield I just want to stay away from right now, but it's not going to be worse for you than anything else. Other ones like, the garden burger that have like corn and beans and mushrooms and stuff, you eat corn and bean and mushrooms already. It's not going to be any different. And you're avoiding the problems that we do know that red meat poses to people in lifetime-based doses. Some of the grilling byproducts are carcinogens, which you can talk more about. Actually, I'll just hand that off to you.
Thank you. That is true. So, but the whole, grilled meat is bad for you and will kill you and cause cancer and all that. That's a huge misnomer. So, if you cook it for too long,
Which people do.
if you grill it for too long, that is when you begin having complex carbon chains forming on the outside. And
Also, the other thing is when we talk about something being carcinogenic, we're not talking about how much it's. Bananas are radioactive, but I'm not saying put on a hazmat suit when you touch a banana. Like, they're radioactive.
Yeah, they'll set up a Geiger counter. They're great.
Yeah.
They're really fun.
True story.
But it's like you're literally talking when that whole study came out of like red meat is going to kill you because if you grill it, it's bad. That it literally raises your chances over a lifetime. If like the standard background percentage to develop cancer, say, is 5%, it raised it to 7%.
Wait, that's almost a 50% increase, though.
Yes, but true, mathematically, absolutely.
There are lots of things that are going to give you cancer, but wouldn't you rather eat bacon than not? That's
The
all
point
I'm
is
saying.
comparing to the veggie burger, like,
Oh, comparing the veggie burger, yeah, absolutely. Meat will kill you compared to a veggie burger.
All right, I have a question way in the back of beautiful flower crown. Hold on, side conversations. 1 second, side conversations. If you can take it outside. Thank you.
Going back to sugar substitutes, I know you said everyone's different, but just if you had to recommend a 0-calorie sugar substitute to people and recommend one for people to absolutely stay away from in general, what would you say?
okay, so the question was if I had to recommend, or anyone else on the panel, please give your opinions, had to recommend a sugar substitute that they love and one to stay away from. I have like a chemistry crush on erythritol. It's this wonderful little molecule that has all these wonderful properties. Use it in everything. The main warning is it going into solution is endothermic, so it pulls heat out of its environment, so it has a cooling mouthfeel, similar to xylitol, which makes it kind of hard to cook with, because if you try to put it in high enough concentrations, it'll crash out of solution. That is to say, you'll make your chocolate bar, you think it's set, you've done your tempering, you start cooling it, and you get crystals that form, and nobody likes that mouthfeel. Other than that, you can do really cool stuff with it. Same with oligosaccharides, which are fiber-like sugars that taste sweet but are mostly non-caloric because your body treats it like fiber.
So if I'm walking into Kroger, what are these? How do I get these?
I mostly get them off the internet, but I do believe erythritol-based mixes are now showing up in the baking aisle under like Swerve or Zeros or a couple other things.
Okay.
Stay away from maltitol. Please stay away from maltitol.
Is that Olestra?
No, Olestra is a fat substitute. So Olestra is fantastic. Olestra is a fat substitute that I believe hit the market in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And what it is it's a fat that you don't digest. And when they tested it in the labs, it was great. It was like, people don't digest it, has no bad side effects, we're gonna make potato chips out of this. And the problem is that when they ran the original test and the product tests, they gave people a serving of potato chips. And I don't think anyone knows what a serving of potato chips is because you never eat.
It's like 4 chips.
Yeah, like you eat the whole bag. And here's the problem, and I'm sorry that this is like right after lunch, but this is why Olestra sort of disappeared from the market, is when you eat an entire bag's worth of potato chips with fat you can't digest, that fat has to go somewhere.
Oh no.
And the term that is used, and I apologize for this, anal leakage.
Yeah. Butthole juice.
No.
Cashew cream. Yeah.
Oh no.
Anyway, the ones to stay away from, maltitol and most of the heavier sugar alcohols can cause various forms of digestive upset. Xylitol is okay, but make sure that your furry friends stay away from it. Xylitol will kill dogs.
I thought she was talking about a different furry.
Good question.
So stevia is in the class of very, very sweet sugar substitutes. It's like something like 200 times as sweet as sugar. The main problem with it is, one, because you only use 1/200th of it, you don't get the sugar chemistry. So if you're trying to bake with it, make chocolate, something where you're relying not just on sugar as a flavor, but as a chemical, it's not going to work because it's just not there. It also, for some people, can have a bitter aftertaste that sort of shows up after the sweet. I like it in my coffee. I can't bake with it.
All right.
Is saccharin still bad? Like
what,
sweet and low?
if you're sensitive to it.
Oh yeah, 'cause, I mean, it's like, this is so over my head. I didn't even know there were all these different sugar substitutes.
Oh, there's lots of sugar substitutes.
Last time I actually paid attention, there were 2 colors, pink and blue.
No, there's yellow, which is sucralose, and then there's green, which is stevia, and then there's like this like orangey one, which is monk fruit extract.
Monk fruit.
Which is another of the hyper sweet things. Yeah, it's a big world. And then Europe has a couple ones that aren't like we don't use in the U.S. but are used in Europe that come in these little tiny tablets that also taste a little funny.
So it literally is like taste the rainbow of sugar.
Yes, and someone will give you bad digestive upset.
Interesting.
That's maltitol. Don't eat that one.
Yes, go ahead.
I was wondering if you heard about the Lone Star tick that makes you allergic to red meat.
Yeah. So the question is there's a tick, the Lone Star tick, which carries is it a parasite or a?
I think
It's a bacterium.
It's a bacterium. Okay, yeah. This sounds like your area of expertise.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a bacterium that is carried by the Lone Star tick. If it bites you, some people will develop an allergy to a sugar that is attached to proteins from meats from all kinds of animals. I think it's all mammals except for humans.
This is darkest timeline Spider-Man.
And so people have then developed allergies to meat. And it's been very hard to diagnose that because the typical allergy, you're eating something and you're having the allergic reaction almost immediately. With these meat allergies, it's often not showing up until several hours later because you're not, the sugar needs to get broken down and into the digestive tract and into the bloodstream, and then the reaction starts. So, people would have a steak for dinner, and then in the middle of the night, they'd have an allergic reaction, go to the hospital, and then the doctor would say, oh no, it couldn't have been the steak, because, that was hours before. So, people for years would have these allergic reactions.
And what do these allergic reactions look like? Is it anaphylactic shock?
It's anaphylaxis, yes. So it's deadly.
Can you describe anaphylaxis real quickly?
So anaphylaxis is it's like hyperinflammation in your whole body. You can't breathe. Your throat closes. You swell up, and you will die if you don't get treatment.
Where does this tick live, and how do I not ever go there?
This tick lives all over the southern United States, and it is moving because of climate change. It is moving either northward.
Is it here? Is it here?
Yes, it is here.
I'm not going outside. Staying in the habit trails.
Okay, so it makes some people allergic to like mammal flesh, but not human.
Not human, and you can eat chicken. Chicken, poultry, and fish do not have.
I'm sorry, did they specifically test that they could still eat human flesh?
No, the humans do not have that sugar.
Oh.
Okay, so basically this is the beginning of the zombie apocalypse. If you can't eat anything other than human.
You can eat chicken and fish.
Yeah.
Reptiles, I assume.
Yeah, well, I like alligator, frog.
Trevor and I are being honest in that we would just start eating humans.
Yeah, I want to know. Raise your hand, panel also. Would you ever, if you had the opportunity, eat human?
Ethically? It depends on the ethics.
Yeah, ethically.
That's the Frankenstein's live panel at 8:30.
Which I'm on.
Me too. But I totally would. I totally would.
I want to know what you have to. Okay. For those of you who didn't hear this nightmare piece of information, the Lone Star tick is the most common type of tick that gets onto people in Georgia. I'm never coming back.
And how many people?
This is my last Dragoncon. Sorry, y'all.
And how many people actually get this allergy?
It's not.
Do you know?
I mean, I don't know the actual numbers, but I mean, it's a growing number of people.
Yeah, it's zombie apocalypse. Georgia, Walking Dead. I mean, there we go, man.
Although I do want to just point out, to be fair, red meat and a lot of mammal flesh is horrible for the environment. It's really unsustainable. So if this is a weird self-correcting Mother Earth thing of we're just gonna make this stupid. If we can't get the humans to care, we're just gonna somehow make them allergic to the stuff.
Hey, brings an entire new meaning to the word baby cakes, personally.
Moving on. Who has a question? Yes, in the back.
Is there any credence to the carcinogenic nature of artificial sweeteners?
Ooh.
Are artificial sweeteners carcinogenic?
So this is not my area of expertise, so big asterisks here. The general consensus appears to be no. We do have now several decades of research and things that were going to crop up have hopefully cropped up. The answer generally seems to be no, but this is one of those things where it's incredibly hard to detangle things, especially cancer rates, where you're seeing the effect 20, 30, 40 years down the road with, as you said, a 5% increase or a 2% increase, or it's incredibly tiny numbers from a huge number of things going in. So the consensus is no. The answer appears to be no. I really wouldn't worry about it. Other things are going to give you cancer first.
Yay, that cheerful note. Who else has a question? Go ahead.
So this was a weird one that was supposed to be asked a little while ago, but then we got off topic of it.
We do that a lot.
So as far as foods that are made with, frozen with, and utilize dry ice, what's the safest way? You got those cheese balls and the nitrogen ice cream and the drinks now. What's the safest way to know that you're utilizing it safely? Specifically the drinks. I know they were giving me people mouth burns and things.
Yeah. How do you safely use dry ice in your cooking or drinking?
Yeah.
Especially with drinking, if you're into making dry ice cocktails, so they're all smoky and foamy and all that, which is science.
It is actually a really cool special.
I know it's cool. They make specialized glassware that actually has a separator in the bottom that you put the dry ice in the lower area and connect it, so then the liquid hits the dry ice, but you're not like tilting back your mouth and suddenly like with ice cubes, and then you get dry ice sticking to your tongue.
So
or
is melted dry? Well, I guess dry ice sublimate. Never mind. Yeah.
The one thing, if you are making or ingesting a dry ice cocktail, that you don't want to do is you don't want to stick your hand, like whole face into it and breathe deep as you're drinking, because you're literally inhaling carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
And that sucks.
Similar with liquid nitrogen, you're inhaling nitrogen, which is great. It's like 70% of our atmosphere, but you can't use it, and a full lungful of it is not oxygen. In general, as you said, dry ice, don't eat the cubes. If you're handling it, use gloves. It will stick to you and continue to burn you.
Mm-hmm.
Use gloves. Do not put it in any sort of sealed container, because the sublimation of the carbon dioxide will cause it to explode. For liquid nitrogen...
Yeah, we used to do that in the lab. We would put it in little tubes and
film canisters.
throw them at our friends.
Just for funsies.
Yeah.
I love scientists.
Isn't that how you make fizzy fruit, though?
What? Pardon?
Isn't that how you make fizzy fruit, though?
If you have a rated container that is rated for the pressure that you're making, then yes. If you're putting it in a random water bottle, the water bottle will explode.
Wait, what are we making with this?
Fizzy fruit.
What is fizzy fruit?
You chuck fruit and dry ice together, and the gas like carbonates the fruit juice.
Carbonated fruit juice. I'm here.
Gets all fizzy.
Yeah. It's like sparkling grapes.
I love science. I need to eat with more scientists. This is delightful. Does anyone else have questions? Yes.
So I remember watching a special one time where they were trying to make eggs out of plant protein, and they were running into a problem where some of the chemicals in the plant were creating a very distinctive plant flavor that they can't seem to get out of the process, that basically triggered to your body that, I'm sorry, you're eating a plant. It's full of protein, it looks like eggs, smells like eggs, sort of tastes like eggs, but you're still eating a plant.
Wait, they're replacing eggs now too?
He's so mad.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, you're an omnivore. That's how it works.
Well, and there are religious...
I
my sister-in-law can't eat eggs unless you just don't tell her there are eggs and things, and then she's very happy about it. She gets very mad when you tell her there are eggs.
There are people who
Now I
have
can't eat it.
There are people who have egg allergies,
Yes.
and that is serious.
So, I'm sorry, what was your question?
I was wondering if anybody knew which chemicals in plants are creating that very distinctive I am a plant flavor that seems to be actually in a lot of even the meat substitutes. It's still
Yeah.
Is this chlorophyll?
Yeah. It would have to be chlorophyll. Because that's what. So when you get like if you like make kale juices and all that, that grassy taste, that's chlorophyll. So if that usually triggers the whole it's plant. I don't know if there's anything else. Not green. Yeah.
Cellulose?
Cellulose doesn't really taste
a lot of
like
things.
one.
Yeah,
but
you
it's
can
in a
make
lot
gum
of
out of
things.
it.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the general thing is despite a lot of statements about, oh, humans are really bad animals, we have bad senses, we're actually pretty good at tasting and smelling a lot of things, and as far as animals go, humans eat a ton of stuff. We eat a huge variety of different foods. Most animals eat a handful of different things. We eat a huge number, and we've evolved to be able to sort of differentiate those things, figure out what's poisonous, figure out what's not, and tolerate all those things, which means that sometimes we have weird sensitivities to things even in really low doses and concentrations. For example, the wide world of whiskeys that all taste slightly different.
Whiskey.
But it's 90% of it is ethanol and water. It's all the same in the majority, same with wine. But it's all those trace, barely present compounds that differentiate all these different liquors and spirits, etc., that are in really tiny concentrations. So similar with chlorophyll or anything else plant-based, you're probably picking up on something that's really trace and really hard to remove.
Same thing with beer. Different yeasts produce different esters to get different flavors. So Blue Moon, for example, other than garbage, is supposed to be it's supposed to be a Belgian white ale. It's not, but Belgian white ales, so you know how Blue Moon has the whole like orange slice on it? That's because they're not using the correct yeast to have a citrus-like flavor in the beer itself. They have to do that to accentuate the citrus-like flavor. So a traditional Belgian Witbier, a Belgian white, uses a particular Belgian yeast that actually produces off flavors that taste like citrus, a little bit of orange. Hefeweizens use a yeast that produces a lemon flavor. Brettanomyces, which is really cool. It's a wine yeast that they're now using in beer to specifically, purposely sour it.
Yeah.
Same with lactobacillus, and it's really cool that because we can taste all these different rad things, that especially in the beer industry, they're messing around with flavors that they've never done before. And it's getting really neat. Except the whole coconut beer thing. I can't get into that. Well, mainly it'll kill me. But.
Yes.
On that topic, I've always had some strange reaction to eating any sort of, whether it's meat or fish, where when I eat it, it tastes like it's gone off, like it's rotten.
Huh.
Interesting.
Is there anything that might?
I have a layman's cure to that because I sometimes get it, but I don't know if it would work for you. I stopped using fluoridated toothpaste.
This has been an issue my entire life.
Yeah.
So for those of you who can't hear, we have someone who, anytime they eat fish or any meat, it tastes rotten or off. It's the curse. It is. It sounds like
That's fascinating.
something.
You could be hypersensitive
Yes.
to the compound.
Hospital man.
There's actually, not to alarm you, even though most people have been alarmed by me, go check and make sure you get like a CAT scan, because sometimes not to warn you, but you're going to get freaked out anyway, some brain tumors can cause that.
Yeah. But she's had it her whole life.
Huh?
Your whole life, yeah?
It can be a very malignant tumor, and it's pressing just right.
That's always
Benign tumor.
Sorry.
Benign.
Benign tumor. Friendly tumor.
A happy tumor.
A happy tumor.
Friendly
That's
little
just pressing
tumor.
on something to make it taste just a little
Just a
weird.
happy little accident.
I had a best friend, his whole life, milk tasted like strawberries.
That is a very strange
And
tumor.
then he went to the doctor for something else, and it was because he had a tumor.
Fascinating.
We have another question back there.
The largest ingredient in beer is water.
Yes.
Have you had any of the beers that are made from reclaimed water? And what's your opinion on the differences in water?
Ooh. Reclaimed
Reclaimed water. Yeah, there's actually a number of breweries that are using reclaimed water. They're using pure water, like reverse osmosis water, and each does. There's not necessarily a flavor difference, but there's absolutely a mouthfeel difference. Reclaimed water tends to be incredibly soft, which is really nifty because you get this kind of like floaty.
What is soft?
Oh, soft, lower pH, and less mineral. Pardon?
What is reclaimed water?
Oh, reclaimed water is runoff. Anything that, like when you water plants or street cleaning or anything like that, it's basically used water that is then filtered, purified, and then reclaimed and reused. There's also, pardon?
It's recycled.
Yeah, it's recycled water. That's a good way to put it. There's even a brewery in, oh God, where are they? I think Oregon, that's starting to use desal water, which is really cool.
So that's desalinated water?
Yeah, desalinated water, which is really nifty.
What is the flavor profile for that?
Weirdly enough, the only way I can describe it is hollow.
Taking out all the minerals.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the interesting thing. The only water that actually causes a dramatic flavor change in the beer and nothing that's just mouthfeel is reverse osmosis water, because it's just hydrogen and oxygen.
Yeah.
And it tastes like garbage. I hate it.
Because you think that the minerals are like fundamental to the beer.
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's why, so the style of Goza, for example, Goza was created in Goslar, Germany, because literally they had a crack in their seawall and salt water was impregnating their water table. So when they started making beer, their beer just came out salty. They thought that was normal. Then they started trading it with other villages, and other villages are going, why is your beer salty? They're like, it's not. Why doesn't yours taste like this? And it became one of the most popular styles in Germany. up until the Second World War, when all the breweries that were specializing it got turned into munitions factories and then bombed, and it wasn't rediscovered until the 80s. And now it's a massive style.
It's very popular now.
Sierra Nevada goes on as a core beer now.
I don't like it.
No, they changed the recipe. It's
we have time for one more question. Yes.
Mine's more of just a request. I think it's really cool, but I always forget how it works. Can you talk about green beer and what makes it green beer?
Green beer?
Wait, green beer like
Like the color?
Like the food. Yeah. It's green. It's kind of sour. It's got some kind of probiotic in it that is specifically making it green beer. No idea.
Whoa.
You've stumped Trevor on a beer thing. You win an award. I don't know what it is. We're all gonna go
not
Google
the food
it.
colored like Saint.
No. It's actual green beer.
It's really. I have not even heard of this.
Oh,
Is it a sour beer?
To be fair, I was drunk when the girl told me about it.
Amazing.
So it's a probiotic.
And so it could be one of the sour beers which are brewed with lactobacilli, which are also considered probiotics. Yeah.
And the color is green. Does it have any kind of like vegetable material in it or anything like that?
It's probably just dyed.
I would think it was just dyed, but I mean there are beers out there that are absolutely probiotic, using lactobacillus, using what's the other one? Acidophilus. Pardon? Yeah, and Brett, absolutely.
Good old Brett. What beers are with Brett?
Any of the sour beers.
Yeah.
So
Any of the sour beers.
that have you can look on it. It might even say that it has
I'll
lactobacillus.
just put that Orpheus in Atlanta is a very good. It has
yes.
a lot of very good sours. It's my favorite
Oh,
brewery.
yes.
I buy it so much every time I come back home.
Yeah, if you ever see something from Almanac Brewing, Rare Barrel, Sour Cellars, Sour Brothers, Cellar Brothers.
There's a lot.
There's a lot.
It's becoming a very popular style, and it's already popular in some areas. Atlanta's really actually a hot spot for sours.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they're healthy.
So this is an issue when you're brewing sours with the lactobacilli. You are raising, or you're changing the pH so that it kills the yeast. So you have to balance that somehow. There are now yeast strains that can do the same thing and can stand that acid from the sour that people are starting to brew with.
But does it withstand the alcohol content?
Yeah,
Okay.
they are very hardy.
Yeah, it becomes a live culture beer, and unless you heat it to pasteurize it to kill off everything, it will keg condition and bottle condition. That means you let it get warm for too long, and it goes boom.
Oh, fun time.
Yeah, if you ever buy beer and you're gonna save it, and it says bottle conditioned, make sure to keep that cold, because it will develop pressure, and then the cap or the cap will pop, or the glass will explode.
All right, we have 1 minute left. Chad, you've been raising your hand. I'm assuming it's because you know something about green beer.
Yeah, I remember this last year around St. Patrick's Day. Someone edited with CRISPR lactobacilli to make them exhibit some gene that was making the beer green.
Rad!
So this is
those
It's
of you-
a CRISPR beer?
CRISPR.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know what CRISPR is, it's a molecular biology tool. It's a protein, and it has a little RNA that guides it to a specific place in DNA, and it cuts, and then you can do whatever you want to the genes that you're trying to edit.
That's the coolest
And
thing ever.
apparently someone has made green beer with this.
Of course.
That's cool.
We're all gonna Google this. All right, so that is the end of our panel. We're out of time.
Oh, are
But
we?
come find us
Oh,
afterwards
geez,
if you have other questions.